All right, hello everybody. Today I've got something for you that I've been meaning to do for a little bit. I finally got my hands on a copy of Silverthorn. This is the third book in the Riftwar Saga. It's the third book in the first saga that Raymond Feist wrote. It is followed by A Darkness at Sethanon, and it is the direct sequel to Magician Master. And I've never read this one before. I read it this weekend because I got it in the mail on Friday. I This is one of those ones that I never actually saw really on a shelf at a bookstore or anything like that. I'm not sure why, because there were reprints of Magician and Magician Apprentice and Magician Master, and I have a reprint of Darkness at Sethanon, but I never managed to grab a copy of this one, and so I remedied that thing, and you know it's I'm finally glad to get my hands on it because there's a bunch of stuff in it that gets referred to a lot in later books, but that I wanted to see for myself. What I'll say is there will probably be some slight spoilers for Magician Master in my review here because of the fact that this book is a direct sequel. So you know, if you don't want, if you're just about to read Magician Master and you don't want to hear anything about it, you might want to skip this for now. But setting that aside, or moving on from there, we've got. I guess first thing I'll do is I'll give kind of an overview. Maybe what I'll do is I'll give an overview, and then I'll do a little bit of plot, but you know how I like to try to avoid giving away too much of the plot in the story, so I'll try to keep it as vague as possible when I get there. But first, let's start with some kind of overall stuff that won't spoil anything. First off, this book actually does start out a little bit rough. I was a little bit surprised. There's this period of about 30 to 40 pages at the beginning of the book where things just aren't quite meshing quite well. The dialogue seems a little funky. It almost sounds like Feist is trying to do like some kind of a dialect or accent, kind of like an early modern English kind of thing, but like not quite doing it right. I don't know what it is, but like when people do, like, I guess if you read enough like Shakespeare or whatever, you read enough, old, not old English, right? But like it's modern English, but it's early modern English. You read enough stuff from the 1600s, 1700s, you kind of get a feel for what sounds right and what sounds wrong. And so it always bugs me when, or not always, but I'm very easily bugged by like early modern English dialects trying to be done without really good attention to detail, done inconsistently. And there's a little bit of that, especially in the first, say, 40 to 60 pages of this book with the dialogue. There's a couple of moments later on in the book where that happens, but Feist seems to catches his pace pretty early on, and everything is good from then on pretty much. But yeah, this did start out a little bit rough. I went through the first 30 pages and I'm like, this is definitely not pulling me in the same way that Magician Apprentice or Darkness is Sethanon or a bunch of other Feist novels have done. And so I was a little bit skeptical, and I kind of had this idea in the back of my head, like maybe that's why it wasn't on the shelves as much, is because it's a little bit rougher. And so like Darkness is Sethanon is a masterpiece. It gets a lot of reprints maybe, and maybe this one kind of gets relegated to the second string kind of thing. There's also a bunch of typos in the paperback version of this book that, of course, I don't know if they were in the hardcover, but I kind of doubt it. There was a people with 3 P's, so little bit of quality control issues there with the paperback. I see that a lot in paperbacks, and it's always very sad. Let's see. So this book is mostly about Arutha and Jimmy and their entourage. We get to see a lot of very good like companionship stuff in this book, and we get to see a lot of the people that don't do much in a lot of the later books actually make a big difference in this one. So Laurie, the bard, Gardon, I guess he's like the Knight Marshal or something like that. He's working in Krondor, and he becomes a big part of this this book. Martin, the Huntmaster, becomes a very big part of this book, or I guess former Huntmaster. Liam, the new king of the Kingdom of the Isles, gets a big part. Meacham, the Franklin of Colgan, gets a big part. We even get some good little bits of dialogue from characters that we aren't going to see much more later on either. Like Fanon is the swordmaster from Cryde, and we get to see some fun little interactions between him and other characters that I really enjoyed. Let's see. We get to see a lot of the growth of the friendship between Arutha and Jimmy. We get to see Jimmy develop from being a thief to a squire, to a close personal accompaniment for Arutha. We get 2 different marriage plot lines at least in this book. And of course, one of them, if you've read any of the later books, you know that Arutha, and even if you've read Magician Master, you know that it seems likely at this point that Arutha is going to marry Anita, and Laurie is going to marry Carlene. We get both of those plot lines in this book, and they're handled reasonably well. The Laurie Carlene is always a little bit, not always, Carlene feels a little bit out of character a bit compared to the previous books. And that might be just because, we haven't seen much of her in 9 years, so it's acceptable. But at the same time, her dialogue seems a little more out, a little different from what you might expect if you've just read the previous 2 books. Of course, one of the big events that we get to hear about regarding Arutha happens in this book, and I knew it was coming, but even though I knew what was going to happen in the next few pages, I still found it very, very well written and riveting. I really wanted to know exactly how events went down when this thing happened. That is mentioned in later books frequently as one of Arutha's kind of prime moments of his life, or not prime, but like most important moments of his life, most pivotal. Yeah. We get to see a lot of I guess you could call them like brother moments where Liam is king now, and so we get to see the way that he interacts with other people, and we get to see the way that he interacts with the people that are there to kind of help him do kingly things, and we get to see him kind of break king character sometimes with particularly close people who are particularly close to him. We get to see the shock on certain people's faces when he, instead of letting someone bow to him, he lifts them up and gives them a hug, kind of thing. Liam is a very good character, and we don't get to see much more of him after this. And so it's really nice to get to to get to see Liam interact with people for a while in this book. And he's a really great character, just kind of like a really friendly, happy, positive character that is just fantastic to have around. So the basic plot of this book revolves around the prophecy that is still happening in the next book. This book is very much connected with the darkness at Sethanon. We get a conflict starting out in Krondor, where basically there's a group of assassins called Nighthawks kind of doing stuff. And so there's a large chunk of the book is dedicated to Arutha and company dealing with them. The events of dealing with the Nighthawks and the events that happen, in that vicinity of the book, then are a catalyst that cause Arutha, as well as Laurie, Gardan, Martin, and Jimmy, to all go basically on a quest to go look for this plant called Silverthorn. It's funny because in this book, Silverthorn is like this mythical plant that supposedly might not even exist. If it does exist, it exists in only one place in the world, and nobody can get there because it's surrounded by hostile dark elves, right? The funny thing is that if you've ever played the Betrayal at Krondor game, you know that in that game world, Silverthorn is super ubiquitous. It's a common poison that assassins and thieves put on their daggers, and you can get little spiders with Silverthorn jelly in a slot for you to slide your knife in there and poison the blade. And a very, very different perspective on the stuff, whether you're looking at the game world or looking at the book world. So we get this very amazing quest with Arutha and Jimmy and company. We get to see a lot of what Feist does really well. And the things that Feist does really well are stealth. He is a fantastic writer of like a thief or something or someone like that, kind of like looking through a place, looking for traps, trying to figure out how to get into a place. He's very, very good at writing that. He's very, very good at writing small unit combat as well, and we get some of that in this book as well. In addition, combat, but of anything between like 3 pairs, say half a dozen to 10,000 people. He's a very good writer of that kind of scale of combat. I kind of get the feeling, and I haven't really like delved into it, but I kind of get the feeling that if I looked at like even larger scale combat, that there's probably some holes in his writing of that there's too much of like a front being over here and people not moving around. But setting that all aside, there's not any of that in this particular book, and so we don't have to worry about that. And there's not even a whole lot of like one-on-one combat. Almost everything is like small team combat, and so it's all very, very well written. Another thing that Feist is really good at writing is reunions. A person meeting with another person who they shouldn't be seeing or they haven't been able to see for a long time, them passing vital information between each other. There's a point where Pug meets with somebody that he hasn't been able to meet with for several years, and that meeting is incredibly well written, even though it's approximately a page of the book. It's probably the most memorable page in the book. Feist is very good at writing those kind of dramatic, meaningful moments where someone meets with someone and says, I have this scroll from so-and-so. He told me to give this to you. And someone opens it up and reads it, and it changes their whole view on reality kind of thing. It's very, very well written there, too. There's a lot of... So the other thing that I want to talk about with Feist, and I've mentioned this before, is that Feist is really good at doing small magic. Like, his small, subtle magic stuff is all really, really good, and really, really, just nice to read, and it doesn't feel like it's banging you over the head. Whenever Feist goes to really big magic, it feels a little cartoonish to me. And that's why I like these early novels a little bit more than some of his later stuff, because there's a lot more small magic in these books as opposed to the big magic that becomes more ubiquitous in later books. There is some big magic in this book as well, and you can tell that it's kind of written with maybe like a comic book or movie kind of sentiment behind it, but it just doesn't do it for me for whatever reason. But again, there's a lot of small magic, which is all really, really well done. And I think Feist is one of the best writers of stealth, small unit combat, reunions, and small magic. So there's a lot of all that in this book, and it's all very well done. Priest magic in this world, or in this book, is a little bit weird, because we know that Midkemia is a world that only had lesser path magic. And it had priestly magic too, but no one thought about priestly magic as being some kind of amazing, overarching superpower that people or groups of people had. And in this book, there's a little bit of big magic from the priestly group as well that feels like it doesn't really make sense in some sense, where if priests could do this, then nobody would have felt like Midkemia was a low magic world. But then all of a sudden you have this massive light show, and the priest magic is duking it out with this, world-ending style, big, awful, dark magic, and kind of holding its own to a certain degree. And you're kind of like, well, if the priest magic could do this, then everybody knew that there was stronger magic than lesser path magic. It's a nitpick, but it is a nitpick that I definitely feel whenever I read big magic in a Feist book. Later on in the story, the plot splits into two. We get Jimmy and Arutha and company, and we also get Pug with Meacham and one of the priests that Arutha meets on his quest. So Arutha kind of goes on part of his quest. He meets a priest. He sends the priest back to go meet with Pug, and they end up on another quest. This quest is also super interesting. Don't want to spoil anything about it. But another thing that Feist is really good at doing is this kind of split path narrative. You always feel like, okay, cool, we got just enough of this group, and now we're moving back to this group, and I care about both groups, and I feel like I understand the characters in both groups, and the switch happens at like a time where I would believe that a switch was happening, as opposed to just like out of the blue and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're over here now. And it's just like, wait, what? You know that a split is coming because an obvious cliffhanger appears, which sounds trite, but it's actually a really good mechanism to prepare the reader for the switch in POV. It's like, and now this horrible thing is happening, and I wonder what's going to happen next. But now we need to go over here, right? It's actually it's almost like a rhetorical technique, honestly, where like if you just like so and so, you're going through this person's life day by day, and then they're like eating breakfast, and in the middle of a spoonful of cereal, you switch over to a totally different group of characters. You haven't prepared the reader for that, and POVs can be jarring. POV changes can be jarring, and so it's actually good for the reader to be a little bit prepared for that. Not for you to be like, and now we're going to go see what these people are doing, but for at least there to be some kind of a punctuation mark between one going to the other. You know what I mean? And Feist does a good job of this. You care about the people in Arutha and Jimmy's group. You care about the people in Pug's group. You want them both to succeed. You're worried that they're not going to succeed. They meet up with some really serious obstructions to their quests, and you want to see how they're going to get through them. The other thing I mean that's pretty much all I really wanted to talk about. Like I said, if you're going to pick this book up, of course I recommend that you go through. Remember, Feist writes books in sagas of 3 or 4 books. This is book 3 in the Riftwar Saga. So if you're going to read this one, I highly recommend you read Magician Apprentice and Magician Master first, and then read this one. And then, read Darkness at Sethanon if you want to keep going, which you should. Darkness at Sethanon is amazing, and I'm going to get to it eventually because I'm going to reread it now that I've finally got my hands on a copy of Silverthorn. So, if you want to start reading Feist, you can pick any of his sagas to start with, but I don't recommend jumping into the middle of a saga and not, and starting from book 3 of this 4-book saga. You will feel jarred if you do that, because these books definitely do connect with each other, and this book definitely does suggest that the Darkness of Sethanon, the book, is coming, and is going to be interesting, and there's going to be some cool stuff in it. And in fact, there is. But yeah, I mean... So, yeah. A lot of character growth. Jimmy grows a lot. Laurie grows a lot. Arutha grows a lot. Pug grows a lot. We get to see a lot of Martin. We get to see a lot of Laurie and Garden and Liam and Meacham and Fannin. A lot of these secondary characters that we're not going to see much of after this. And so this is a great book to enjoy some of those characters, especially if you liked them in the first books, right? If you were a big fan of Meacham and you wanted to see Meacham do cool stuff, you got to read this book. If you were a fan of Laurie and you wanted to see Laurie do more things, you got to read this book. If you were a fan of Martin and Liam and you liked them in the previous books, you're going to want to read this book. Seeing Liam acting as king is super fun and super heartwarming. It's one of the lightest and happiest parts of the book, and I can't recommend that enough either because we need more of that. We have the plot. It's a solid plot. Conflict with Nighthawks gets out of hand, pushes Arutha into a quest. Arutha going on a quest catalyzes Pug going on a quest. 2 quests, partial completion, finish the book, move on to the next book. It's really well done. It's really just it's just very well plotted, I guess is the way to put it. We have a little bit of clunkiness in the first 30 to 40 pages of the book. We have occasional bits of dialogue that just kind of rub me the wrong way for whatever reason. We have a decent amount of big magic and single combat, which I think are not Feist's best attributes, but we have a ton of what Feist is really good at in this book, and it shows. It was a super good read, and I devoured it. So yeah, that's I think all I've got for you guys for today. I'm gonna be working on. Shoot, I think so I've got an idea for a video later this week, and then I don't want to spoil that one because it's gonna be fun. And then I also have a video that I'm gonna read part of I think I'll do it like in episodes over the course of a couple of weeks. But I'm going to read the first story that was ever in Weird Tales, which is Weird Tales is the magazine that Lovecraft wrote a lot in, and like the first issue, of course, is in the public domain. And so I thought, well, why not go take a look at that very first story in the very first issue and see what Weird Tales had to offer early on. So that's what I've got for today. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to support the channel, you know what to do. Links in the description, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, go check out Silverthorn if you get a chance. It is very, very good. Give those first 30 to 40 pages a little bit of a pass. I feel like maybe Feist had like written all of Magician in like one long chunk, and then he kind of like took a little break, and then he sat back down again to do Silverthorn, and maybe he kind of needed to get into the swing of things. By the 30 to 40 page mark, he's back into the swing of things, with the exception of a couple of little bits of dialogue that seem a little funky here and there, and you know, the usual things that I think he's good at, but not as stellar at as everything else, right? Like, I'm not saying that he's bad at writing big magic. I'm just saying that his big magic doesn't have the magic of him writing reunions or stealth, because I think Feist is a grand master at writing those things. And you know, the quality is still good, but the difference shows, if that makes sense. Anyway, that's what I've got for today. Thanks again. Have a good week, and I will see you next time.